this idea that Creole means mixed race comes into being in New Orleans at this point. And because these particular Creoles latched onto Creole identity the most during Reconstruction and Jim Crow, it caused another division, bifurcation in Creolite in New Orleans by shoving out all the Louisiana Creoles who phenotypically look black. So that means dark brown complected, coarse hair, Louisiana Creoles who also did not have French surnames, and Louisiana Creoles who, importantly, didn't live downtown or who didn't live in the 7th Ward. This is really important in understanding the stickiness of Creole identity in New Orleans today, because when most people think of Creole identity in New Orleans, you think of the Charbonnets, you think of the Morials, you think of, light complexioned people with ambiguous features, certain surnames who come out of the 7th Ward or something like that. When in fact, you still had these muted Creoles, as I came to refer to them, who still continue to practice Creole culture, who still continue to identify as Louisiana Creoles, but who get shoved uptown, which is like the Anglophone, the American quarters of New Orleans. Downtown is the French, the Latin side, the Creole side. And so the muted Creoles get shoved out of the Creole nucleus in New Orleans and live among Americans. They apostatize, they become Protestants, Methodists, Baptists, Episcopalians, some of them, and on and on and on. But these muted Creoles still continue to identify as Louisiana Creole, but not publicly, because the public face had to be Black or African American because of where they were living in New Orleans and because of the politics of identity, and especially in the context of Jim Crow in New Orleans. In my opinion, muted Creoles, or first of all, they're not discussed in academia at all. They are not discussed publicly at all either. New Orleans is also a very sticky place in terms of identity because as it pertains to Creole, because in New Orleans, because of Jim Crow, you find that people still today, they will refer to Creole food, etouffee, gumbo, and on and on and on. They will refer to Creole culture, music, for example, but Creole identity is not a public identity in New Orleans. Totally different from outside of New Orleans. And so, in my opinion, one of the areas of a study that a lot of people, both academics and non-academics, journalists included, or ignoring, are the muted Creoles. What was the process of becoming a muted Creole in New Orleans? And despite being muted as Creoles, what types of Creole isms did these muted Creoles retain? Today, we're finding that more muted Creoles from New Orleans are coming to the forefront that are talking about their Creolite. A lot of this is happening because of language resuscitation, in particular with Kourivini. Not so much with French, but with Kourivini especially. We're finding that a lot of people who are muted Creoles in New Orleans are becoming comfortable with their Creole-ness through the language, and are talking about their experiences, being shoved aside. They didn't look a certain way. They didn't have the right surnames. They didn't come out of the 7th Ward, downtown, or whatever the case may be. And so those are the muted Creoles.